This week on Quality Digest Live, want to better engage your people? You know, there's a standard for that.
There's a standard for everything.
Imagine that.
That's right. Plus, we look at the risks of management status quo. That and more when we come back.
And welcome back to Quality Digest Live for March 16th, 2018. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
That's right, and I'm Quality Digest editor-in-chief, Dirk Ducharme. According to a new Gallup poll, Americans are split in their support for a hypothetical, as now hypothetical, Universal Basic Income, or UBI program. You've probably heard of Universal Basic Income. It's been talked about for a while by people such as Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg. And
Yeah, real dummies, all of those guys.
Yeah, real dummies, all those guys, yeah. I don't know. All right, it would guarantee, if you haven't heard of it, a Universal Basic Income would guarantee a minimum income for workers who lose their jobs because of advances in artificial intelligence. So, I mean, you got to set the stage here a little bit to understand the problem. It's estimated, according to Gallup, that about 47% of all U.S. jobs are at risk of being replaced by some sort of artificial intelligence, or AI. And most Americans think that new technology will create fewer jobs than it replaces. Now, according to Gallup, half of American workers say they would need additional education or training to find an equivalent job if they lost their current job due to technology. So the idea behind Universal Basic Income, again, according to Gallup, is that the federal government would provide every adult below a certain income threshold with a specific amount of money each year in order to offset, well, not completely offset, but kind of mitigate the loss of their job due to technology, right? Mm-hmm. So this has already been tried in a couple places. Finland has tried it. Canada has tried it. There's a trial program planned on for doing this in San Francisco. So the question Gallup wanted to know was, what do Americans think of this idea? Well, according to their survey, 48% support it and 52% oppose a UBI program for workers who lose their job to technology. So roughly 50-50.
Yep, very close.
And not surprising, the breakdown of this is of those who support a UBI, 65% identify as Democrats, 48% as independent, and 28% identify as Republicans. Now, it's estimated that a UBI program would cost trillions of dollars per year. So obviously the question is, gee, this sounds great, but who's going to pay for it, right? Well, there's not a whole lot of taste for increased taxes, even by survey respondents. Respondents were more in favor of the companies who adopt such technologies themselves to be the ones who pay into a UBI fund. So for those who support UBI, 74% of Republicans say it should be handled by companies that benefit from technology. 88% of Democrats agreed with them, as well as 75% of independents. So it is kind of universally agreed upon for those who want a UBI, who think it's a good idea, that companies themselves pay for this kind of program, which, if you think about it, kind of makes sense. If the companies are benefiting from some sort of artificial intelligence, which allows them to lay off people, have fewer employees, then maybe it does make sense that they're the ones who help pay into this fund, which the intent is to help displaced workers get trained up in new skills and so forth. So it kind of makes sense that you go that direction as opposed to everybody pay into a tax for it when only a few of the companies are benefiting from it.
I mean, there would be some offsets to it too. Obviously, people that would get UBI wouldn't be able to claim unemployment, for instance.
I would imagine.
So there'd be an offset there.
Well, true.
You know, the companies that would pay into it may not have to pay into unemployment insurance from their payroll as well.
Good
maybe.
point.
There may be ways of offsetting it a little bit. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a hit somewhere because we're talking about $1 trillion.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's probably ways to make that balance out a little bit better than just saying, well, we're just going to give these people a pile of money.
Well, yeah, and I think I mean you could even say something like, let's say if companies were sponsoring it, it's like, okay, well, we're laying you off because of automation. but we will supplement we'll give you some sort of UBI if you go to school.
If you go to school.
In other words, you just can't sit on your rear end. You have to be, maybe going to school. I mean, that might be one stipulation for it. It's like, okay, well, you lost your job because you didn't have the skills.
Right.
We're going to give you some skills.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Well,
All right.
we're gonna find out. Actually, this next story kind of ties into that a little bit, Dirk. This idea about reskilling to a certain extent. So each month on this show, as many of you know, we bring you our special CMS Corner segment. This is the place where we chat with the movers and shakers in the world of portable 3D metrology. And usually our guests on the show are members of the executive committee of the Coordinate Metrology Society or vendors of the hardware, software, and peripherals seen at the group's annual convention, the CMSC. However, another important part of the society is made up of academia. Increasingly, as industry seeks the highly trained workforces of today and tomorrow, it's turning to universities, technical schools, and community colleges to help them fill in their employment opportunities. And one such institution is Fullerton Community College in Southern California, not that far away from right here.
Nope.
Later this year, the school will begin offering a metrology program to its students, one of only a handful of such programs across the country. So, to tell us more about this now, we're very pleased to welcome to the show Daniel O'Brien. He's the coordinator of Fullerton Community College's Machine Technology Department. Dan, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you guys doing?
We're doing just great. Thanks again for joining us today and telling us a little bit about this very interesting program. Dirk was just talking about kind of universal basic income and the idea that we want to kind of reskill these people and that we want to bring into industry. It's an important thing. And I understand that your program has actually been in the works for a couple of years, but what's been the impetus to actually launch it here in 2018?
Well, it has been in the works for 5 years. We are a traditional machine technology program. We teach everything from conventional machining to CNC setup, programming, operation. We also teach Mastercam, SurfCam, SolidWorks, traditional programming classes along with 5-axis machining and CNC Swiss. Well, one of the things that's really been crucial and has been expressed to us by our advisory committee is that the importance of the machinists in the business to be able to measure, because you have to be able to measure your parts to get feedback to adjust your CNC machines. But not only that, just the metrology field in general really needs people that have some experience in how to see datums, how to properly align and measure parts. And that's really with the advent of more technical digital measuring tools, CMMs, and your Romer arms, it's becoming more and more of a need that people are educated in more of these technologies, along with knowing a little bit about your traditional skills and kind of putting everything together to be able to properly measure parts.
So how is this program supported both in terms of money and equipment and so forth?
Well, the program, we've been purchasing equipment and acquiring it over the last several years with some money that comes from the Carl Perkins Act. That's called the TIA funds here in the state of California. With that, we've added 12 Romer arms with laser scanners. We've added a coordinate measuring machine. Also, California just recently got a $200 million grant known as the Strong Workforce Initiative. And that goes for the entire community college system, but it's really focused for career technical education programs. Well, we got a nice chunk of that, and so we're in the process of continuing to add additional metrology equipment, hand tools. We're going to teach everything from traditional measuring, which includes your micrometers, calipers, and bore gauges, everything that is really not going to go away, but also we're going to make sure we cover all the new technologies, digital laser scanning, Romer arms, coordinate measuring machines, and whatever else comes into place within the industry.
And Dan, can you delve in a little bit more into kind of the more specifics about the kind of training that you're going to be providing to these students starting this year?
Sure. Well, the program that we have, it's a transcriptable certificate that will be offered. It's 29 units. It also will be eligible to, students can get an associate's in manufacturing with a focus on metrology. And it's going to focus on a lot of traditional blueprint reading, geometric dimension tolerancing. We have included in the program a basic intro machine shop class, along with manufacturing processes, technical math. So it's kind of a whole complete package. Along with that, of course, is a traditional metrology class, which will be kind of a general applications, everything related to metrology. And then we go into 3 additional classes that really focus on utilizing the roamer arms, being able to measure, properly establish, measuring plans for parts, being able to program coordinate measuring machines, and use vision systems, and whatever's required to really be able to do model-based inspection, which is really demanded these days by a lot of our local industries.
And what about after graduation? I mean, is Fullerton in some kind of feeder program into industry, or what kinds of opportunities can your graduates hope for?
Well, with our machine technology program, we have lots of local companies in this local area. They, on a regular basis, hire our students out of our program, and a lot of them go into medical manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing. We also have a training program specifically set up for Disneyland. We have Disney employees here on a regular basis. We have SpaceX here. Southern California is a very interesting area in that we have virtually every industry you can think of is here. We have a very large aerospace manufacturer. We have a lot of medical manufacturing happens here. So all these companies, they've kind of been driven to have additional inspection requirements in order to get their parts passed. Now, Southern California also has a lot of smaller job shops. So they have anywhere from 5 to 10 people. And a lot of these smaller companies that support the larger companies, they're all required to have dimensional metrology labs and have employees that are trained in these newer modern digital methods. And pretty much all of them are lacking a person that can do that. So, I mean, there are just jobs everywhere you could possibly think of for our students. Employers are really chomping at the bits to be able to hire students that have some sort of background and education in this prior, so they don't have to, burden of having to do the on-the-job training themselves.
And that was actually my next question as we're wrapping this one up. What are the benefits for the industry as you see them? I mean, what can the manufacturers look forward to getting when they hire these new graduates?
Well, they're going to get employees that already have some sort of background. We try to touch on a little bit of manufacturing, and we try to touch on, geometric tolerancing. So when they're hiring students out of our program, they're getting employees that already have a little bit of experience in measuring things. One of the exercises we plan to do in one of our later classes of the program is to actually give the students a series of parts, and some of the parts will be good, some of the parts will be bad. And it's going to be their job to develop an entire inspection plan, measure according to geometric tolerancing, and find the bad parts. And so we're really going to put them through a real practical exercises that hopefully will transfer directly over to what they're going to be performing on the job.
Well, Dan O'Brien of Fullerton Community College, thanks again for joining us today on CMS Corner of Quality Digest Live. Really appreciate that information. Good work you're doing down there at Fullerton, and please keep it up.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, Dan. Thank you again.
Thanks, Dan.
Good stuff there, Dirk. I mean, that's always encouraging.
We've been talking about,
Sure.
Both schools and industry have got to step up to get this training going, so that people are leaving college or voc school or whatever with the skills they need.
Well, Dan made a great point there. I mean, they're walking in with so much of the skill. These are, I don't want to say they're arcane, but they're skills that you don't generally find in people coming out of academia. Right. So, I mean, a specific focus, and you heard right there, I mean, the equipment they're using is really good, cutting-edge equipment as well. So they're ready to work, and they're ready to do the job. So, really good program for industry and for academia, for the people in the program as well.
Good stuff.
All right. Well, our next piece is called 3 Risks of Management Status Quo, and it's the name of an article that appeared late last month on the MDM. That's the Modern Distribution Management website, and we linked out to the piece in Wednesday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. Now, this is a short piece, I should say, but it contains, Dirk, a lot of wisdom packed into just a very small amount of space. The key takeaway is that those things that help a business during its startup phase can actually hurt it as it seeks to rapidly expand. Owners or even top managers within these small businesses that want to turn into a medium-sized one Ones I think would be well advised to consider the differences in running operations at different points in their growth cycle. I mean, it's not the same. I mean, especially if you are an owner and you're the one that with the idea that you brought into business, well, the things that it takes to do that aren't necessarily the things that it takes to grow a business from the startup phase. And that's really what this article is all about.
That's right.
I mean, now take decision making. That's really the first point that we're talking about in this piece. When companies are just starting out, a handful of people, again, sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's that owner, that sole proprietor, can essentially, that person make all the critical decisions. But once the company starts to experience rapid growth, specialization sets in. You know, you have your marketing, then you have your sales. You know, sales and marketing, then you have, all right, we need marketing and sales. Social media, you know, it's just within the communications, right? And there's zillions of other things like that, right? So if you're doing that, if you're a specialized organization, you know, executives can't really, you know, do it by themselves. They got to delegate those decision-making opportunities, because if they don't, it's going to stifle the business, and it's going to cause delay and indecisions. And those are really deadly sins. So you really want to be clear about the people that you're raising up, give them the authority to make the decisions, and let them make the decisions much quicker and much more accurately. Another risk that comes from being locked into the status quo is, ironically, the avoidance of risk. You wouldn't think that avoiding risk is a risk, but we all know that risk and reward are opposite sides of the same coin. So if you want your organization to grow, you'd better be comfortable in taking some chances, even if you make the occasional mistake. I mean, those experiences are going to keep you learning and set you up for sustainable success. I mean, that's a really good one. I mean, what the article talks about, I didn't mention it as much here in that little overview, was the fact that, you know, you want to be kind of, and I'm sure I agree with this, but you want to be kind of risk averse when you first start.
Sure.
When you launch. I mean, the very act of launching means that you're taking a risk. But once you get through the idea that you're going to launch and you have a business going, many times you're kind of risk averse at the very beginning. You want to be really careful with your capital. But when you start growing and you start having, you know, orders of magnitude growth, you need to really take more risks, because if you don't, you're going to stagnate, and that's not a good thing. Third and finally, you can't get sucked into the "we've always done it this way" mindset. And that's really where the heart of the reason why, you know, you need to fight so hard against the status quo. You know, you can't just say we've always done it that way. Just because something's worked in the past, and maybe it still works, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in the future. A company's only really as good as its ideas, which are generated by, of course, employees trying new and different things. Managers have to be the cheerleaders for constant innovation to support that kind of growth. And if you take those three things together, it's clear that falling victim to these three behaviors can critically constrain a young and growing business. And they're all interrelated. You know, that's the other thing if you think about it. I mean, you can't innovate if you can't take risks, and you can't harness the power of your team to take those innovative risks if you can't delegate and empower your employees to make those decisions. I mean, it kind of all fits together. I mean, ultimately, those businesses that are built to succeed and are going to succeed in the future overcome those things, those limitations, and they scale accordingly. And they do so because their leaders fight against the status quo, and they constantly adapt their styles to reflect the varying needs of their growing organizations. That's a really important little message there. Like I say, a short article, but I mean, the messaging there, and again, it was in the distribution framework, applies to anybody, anywhere, if you're in that space. And it's important to realize that.
And strangely, is kind of as you alluded to there, employees and delegating of tasks and so forth really points out that employees are what responsible, and
they're the engine
to keep it going. And anybody familiar with the latest ISO 9001:2015 standard knows that a lot of it, the standard that is, or your QMS, depends on people, you know, their knowledge, their training, and so forth. So what many people don't know is that there is a, wait for it, an ISO guideline.
There you go, imagine that.
Of course, that deals with the framework of how you develop and maintain competent people. It's called ISO 10018, that's 10018, and its title, the title of the standard is, or the guideline is Quality Management Guidelines on People Involvement and Competence, which kind of says it all. But let me read you, just to really drive it home, let me read you part of the introduction of ISO 10018. Quote, "The overall performance of a quality management system and its processes ultimately depends on the involvement of competent people and whether they are properly introduced and integrated into the organization. The involvement of people is important in order for an organization's quality management system to achieve outcomes which are consistent and aligned with their strategies and values. It is critical to identify, develop, and evaluate the knowledge, skills, behavior, and work environment required for the effective involvement of people with the necessary competence. End quote. That's from the intro to ISO 10018. So,
Yep.
yeah, kind of makes sense, right?
It does, yep.
All right. Well, here to tell us a little bit more about ISO 10018 is Bruce Bolger, founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance and co-founder of the International Center for Enterprise Engagement ISO 10018 certification program. Hi, Bruce. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, or good morning your time, folks.
All right. Hey, so I probably bungled a lot of that, but so if you can tell us from an expert's point of view, what is, in general terms, what is ISO 10018 all about?
Well, it's actually pretty exciting because if you think about it, ISO 9000 began in 1987, and they left out a critical issue, and that was people. And in around 2010, the technical for a bunch of engineers, and we looked at this all from a process standpoint, and some ahas went off, and everybody realized they had left out. So ISO came up with ISO 9000, new quality principles, which relates to Annex SL.
Hey, Bruce, let me interrupt here for Bruce. Let me interrupt for a little bit here. We're having some problems with your
Audio.
Can you check check your mic, or maybe I think you said you were using a headset mic earlier. Maybe put that on. You were cutting out. For
Okay, I'll try it again. I am so sorry. I'm right next to the router. I'll be right there. I'll try that.
Okay. No problem.
But the standard, as we know, and Bruce is going to tell us more about that, I mean, it really does tie into ISO 9001. He started telling us about ISO 9001 and how really ISO 10018 sprung off of some of the protocols of ISO 9001.
Right, and I think he's going to get into this a little bit as soon as we get him back on the line here, is that ISO 9001 2015, as you read through it, you can see there's a very strong component that involves, and I think you saw it in the earlier versions too, but it's really driven home in 2015. There's really a very strong component in there of training and competency and verifying the competency of your employees and making sure that they can do the jobs that are expected of them, delivering the quality to the customer and so forth. But what ISO 10018 does is really has this framework around
codifies
it.
Yeah.
That codifies it.
Yeah.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi there. Does that sound better?
Oh yeah, thank you. Perfectly.
It sure
yeah,
does.
yeah.
Thanks for that.
So just go ahead and just recap us a little bit there. Just again, kind of briefly. Mike and I were chatting about it a little bit, but just briefly, what the intent of 10018 is.
Yes, it's just as you were actually well explaining, Dirk. It's applying a system to people management in the same way that ISO 9000, I should say, applied a system to process management. So what they've looked at is the need to have a culture, leadership, communication and coaching, communication, I should say, feedback, community. So they've taken rewards and recognition, analytics. They've taken all these components and said, you've got to have agreed upon nomenclature, goals, scope, culture, and a process.
And Bruce, maybe you can explain a little bit further about this, how it ties in with ISO 9001 and other ISO management system standards.
Yeah, it's really an outgrowth in many ways from Annex SL, which is a management system that now 16 different standards, including 9001, have to use. These are all requirements, by the way. These are not, these are things that organizations have to do if they want to have the certification, or if they at least want to practice the standards, whether or not they get the certification. And the idea is that they dictate how they define that, okay, we have to have a clear culture of quality. Define that. What does that mean? What are our objectives? We have to make sure all of our leadership is trained in it, and that means our frontline leadership. We have to have a means of coaching them, assessing them. We have to assess engagement. We have to have a formal plan for communicating our quality standards, for making sure people are trained in them, to create a community around them, like a blog or things like that. And then rewards and recognition, analytics, and so in other words, the idea is that you cannot make quality happen without engaging people, and people are complicated. Carrots aren't enough. Information isn't enough. Learning isn't enough. Great leadership isn't enough. ISO's figured out.
Okay. And so what would you say would be maybe some key provisions of ISO 10018 that maybe people aren't familiar with? Maybe they're kind of familiar with ISO 9001, what it says, but what might they find different or surprising about 10018?
Well, the focus on people, and I think if you're an engineer or you're very process oriented, it's easy to just gloss over clauses 4.12 and the clauses around 7, clauses of 5. But I think what's really important is the connection of interest, they call it interested parties or stakeholders. So the number one thing is always thinking about people. How are people going to affect every single thing we're going to do? And it's not just our employees. That's why we call it enterprise engagement. And ISO refers to stakeholders and interested parties, because interested parties include consumers, distribution partners, sales and non-sales employees, vendors. So I think the number one thing is looking holistically at the people that can affect outcomes. And then secondly, looking at the tools. Companies have terrible silos, and quality managers back in the 90s had to break down those silos to connect the dots. I think ISO standards, many people would agree, it's all about connecting the dots. Well, there are terrible silos in engagement between training, communications, marketing, rewards and recognition. These are at big companies often people that don't even barely talk to one another. So the biggest challenge will be for the quality executive to do what he or she had to do with quality processes, and that is bring together the heads of all the groups, including marketing, finance, operations, to agree upon an overall culture quality vision from which everything has to cascade.
And Bruce, as we wrap this up, do you see ISO 10018 as a standalone, or is it best used as part of a QMS in the same way that ISO 9001 is?
I think that ISO 9001 already requires requires everything's voluntary, but it already has all of the essential frameworks of 10018. So 10018 I view as a toolkit to do, and that's what it was designed to do. We've interviewed and spoken to the founders, and they intended it to be a toolkit to flesh out a process that's only touched upon in clauses 4, 5, and 7, and I believe 8. So what they did was they pulled out all of the people components of QMS, and they put it into a separate standard that they believed could be applied to any type of organization. So it was intended to be for non-manufacturing companies, and it was intended to provide guidance for any organization following the NXSL management system, which is about 16 different standards, so that they can do the same thing. They don't have to do the same thing for multiple standards. They build that system into their organization, and that satisfies all of the criteria for the other standards.
Okay, perfect. Well, you know, if our viewers today are interested in learning more about this topic, Quality Digest and the EEA and the International Center for Enterprise Engagement are presenting a webinar called ISO 9001 and ISO 10018, Developing People Engagement in a QMS. The webinar happens on Tuesday, March 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Ron McKinley of the International Center for Enterprise Engagement will be your presenter, and I'll be hosting. So keep your eyes open in your email inbox for information about how you can register. And Bruce, thanks for joining us this morning. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate that.
All right.
Good stuff there.
Yeah. And like you said, you know, this is one of those things where if you are registered or certified to 10018, you have some confidence that if you go into other standards like ISO 9001 or 14001, whatnot, you're meeting the needs, because all of them are tied together under the high level structure, that you're going to be meeting the needs of all of those standards in terms of what you're doing with your employees. So good stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, we got a couple minutes here. So
we'll do this quick. All right, great.
Earlier on, we were talking about universal base income.
UBI. Yep.
UBI. You and I have never really talked about that. I mean, what do you think of that idea? I mean, is that putting, I mean, people lose jobs all the time for whatever reason, right? And I mean, is it really the responsibility of industry or the government or whatever? Look, you know, you ran out of skills, or, you know, somebody brought in a robot, you're out on the street, gee, that's just the way it goes. That's the way it's always been. Do we really need another safety net.
Well, things always change. I mean, things always change. 100 years ago, there were very few safety nets for people that did lose their jobs. We've always used the example of ditch diggers who lost their jobs to
Right.
steam shovels, right?
Right.
That's a classic example. And I mean, at that point, there was nothing. You fell totally out in many cases, and there was poverty that's not like the poverty we have now. I mean, it was backbreaking, deathly poverty.
Right.
Not that every poverty is good, but
Right.
so we have put systems in place as time has gone along in this country and in the rest of the world too. Actually, this country is behind the rest of the world in some cases in terms of safety nets. So the question is, from a global good, from a universal good, what is the right thing to do? I mean, and it does kind of fall in somewhat to your belief system. I mean, does government exist to simply get out of the way and make sure that everybody has the rights and the liberty to do pretty much whatever they want, and only with some moderate protections and restrictions? Or does government exist to help people and to make sure that everyone has an equal, fair shot and can have their piece of what society, the benefits of society are? It depends on how you feel politically to a certain extent.
Well,
I think that there should be safety nets that are very strong, that help people as much as possible, that there is a good for society when more people participate.
Well, I think something that was interesting in that Gallup survey is that in general, Republicans were more against a UBI, and reading between the lines there because of something else further in the webinar in the survey.
Yeah.
It seems like they were against it if it was a federal program, if it was basically taxpayer
Paid by
money.
taxpayers,
But when
yeah.
all of a sudden the question was, and this was only for people who liked a UBI, who should pay for it, is like pretty much everybody agreed. No, it was like 75 or 80%, something like that. Everybody agreed that no, it shouldn't be the taxpayer, it should be the companies themselves that are responsible for it because they're the ones who are benefiting from it.
Increasingly, those lines are blurring. I mean, you look at a company like Apple. I mean, if Apple has to pay, let's say, pick a number, $250 billion in this program over the course of time, we will pay some of that. It will be a tax. Maybe it'll be a tax of $5 on your next iPhone.
Well,
we will pay for that. I mean, when there's
nothing's free.
Yeah, when there's these products that are so ubiquitous that everybody has in some way, shape, or form, and they affect so broadly the sector, the industry, economic sector, that you're gonna pay for it anyway, in one way or another.
Yeah.
So, but I understand where I mean. Hey, nobody wants to pay extra taxes for something that you feel is supporting just some group of people that you don't know.
Yeah.
But we do that already. I mean, we have Social Security. We have things that we pay for, we pay into. That's part of the social contract of being in this country is you pay in, and then if you need it, you can get it. It's not pure capitalism. We're not in a purely capitalist society. You hear many times, you'll hear deep rock red ribbed conservatives say, we have socialism in this country. Well, yeah, we do. We have some socialist things that happen in this country. There's a blend in this country of pure capitalism and some socialist elements because you need the safety net. I think you need that. Others say you don't. Some say you need way more. I mean,
Right.
when you have a country of 325 million people, you're going to have a very wide divergence of belief systems. You have to find something that works for the most part, most people. And it does seem like from that survey that most people do support UBI if it's at least partially funded by the industry.
If it's funded by the industry,
So,
all right.
good stuff there, Dirk.
All right,
Thank
well,
you,
that's
man. All righty. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks again to Dan O'Brien of Fullerton Community College for joining us via phone earlier on the show, via Skype phone. We also appreciated Bruce Bolger of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance for Skyping in. And don't forget that the EEA and the International Center for Enterprise Engagement, ICE, not that one, are teaming up with us here at Quality Digest to bring you the webinar ISO 9001 2015 and ISO 10018, Developing People Engagement in a QMS. And that webinar happens on Tuesday, March 20th, this Tuesday coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Ron McKinley, the International Center for Enterprise Engagement, is presenting, and Dirk right here is going to be your host. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you register. There's actually a link right below the video player screen right down there. I believe there is, where we can register to that webinar. If not,
or maybe not, it's in the article.
If not, it's in the article.
There's a link to the article, and there's a
and you're going to get an email anyway.
I may have forgotten to do that,
so check that
or
out.
maybe under the player page. I don't know.
It's somewhere. We'll get it to you.
I'm 60 now. I just forget stuff.
Are you 61?
Shh.
All right. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us. Have a great weekend.
So long.
Bye.